In 2014 we published a disclaimer about the forecast. In 6 years the scenario has changed dramatically. This new disclaimer is meant to single out the situation from 2020 onwards. Talking about the United States and the European Union as separated entities no longer makes sense. Both are the Western Bloc, keep printing money and will share the same fate. After COVID we can draw two major conclusions. The Western world success model has been built over societies with no resilience. It can barely withstand any hardship, even a low-intensity one. It was assumed, but we got the full confirmation beyond any doubt. The COVID crisis will be used to extend the life of this dying economic system through the so-called Great Reset. The Great Reset, like the climate change, extinction rebellion, planetary crisis, green revolution, shale oil, hoaxes promoted by the system, is another attempt to slow down dramatically the consumption of natural resources, and therefore extend the lifetime of the current system. It can be effective for a while but finally won't address a bottom-line problem and will only delay the inevitable. The core ruling elites hope to stay in power, which is in effect the only thing that really worries them. The collapse of the Western financial system, and ultimately the Western civilization, has been the major driver in the forecast, along with the confluence of crisis with a devastating outcome. As COVID has proven, Western societies embracing multiculturalism and extreme liberalism are unable to deal with an aerial hardship. The Spanish flu 1 century ago represented the death of 40-50 million people. Today the world's population is 4 times greater, with air travel in full swing, which is by definition a super spreader. The death casualties in today's world would represent 160 to 200 million in relative terms, but more likely 300-400 million taking into consideration the air travel factor that did not exist 1 century ago. So far, COVID death toll is roughly 1 million people. It is quite likely that the economic crisis due to the lockdowns will cause more deaths than the virus worldwide. The Soviet system was less able to deliver goodies to the people than the Western one. Nevertheless, Soviet society was more compact and resilient under an authoritarian regime. That in mind, the collapse of the Soviet system wiped out 10% of the population. The stark reality of diverse and multicultural Western societies is that a collapse will have a toll of 50 to 80% depending on several factors, but in general terms the most diverse, multicultural, indebted and wealthy, highest standard of living, will suffer the highest toll. The only glue that keeps united such aberrant collage from falling apart is overconsumption with heavy doses of bottomless degeneracy disguised as virtue. Nevertheless, the widespread censorship, hate laws and contradictory signals mean that even that glue is not working anymore. Not everybody has to die. Migration can also play a positive role in this. The formerly known as second and third world nations are an unknown at this point. Their fate will depend upon the decisions they take in the future. Western powers are not going to take over them as they did in the past, because these countries won't be able to control their own cities, far less likely countries that are far away. If they remain tied to the former world order, they will go down along Western powers but won't experience the brutal decline of the late, because they are poorer and not diverse enough, but rather quite homogeneous, used to deal with some sort of hardship, but not precisely the one that is coming. If they switch to China, they can get a chance to stabilize, but will depend upon the management of their resources. We expected the situation to unfold, and actually is unfolding right now, with the November election triggering a major bomb if Trump is re-elected. If Biden is elected, there will very bad consequences as well. There is a lot of bad blood in the Western societies, and the protests, demonstrations, rioting and looting are only the first symptoms of what is coming. However, a new trend is taking place overshadowing this one. The situation between the three great powers has changed dramatically. The only relevant achievement of the Western powers during the past decade has been the formation of a strategic alliance, both military and economic, between Russia and China. Right now, the potential partnership between Russia and the European Union (EU) is dead, with Russia turning definitively towards China. That was from the beginning the most likely outcome. Airbus never tried to establish a real partnership, but rather a strategy to fade away the Russian aerospace industry. Actually, Russia and China have formed a new alliance to build a long-haul airliner. Western Europe, not to mention the United States, was never interested in the development of Russia or forming anything other than a master-slave relationship with Russia, providing raw materials and towing the line of the West. It was clear then, and today is a fact. Russia has been preparing for a major war since 2008, and China has been increasing her military capabilities for the last 20 years. Today, China is not a second-tier power compared with the United States. Both in military and economic terms, China is at the same level, and in some specific areas are far ahead. In the domain of high-tech, 5G has been a success in the commercial realm, but the Type 055 destroyer is also another breakthrough, with the U.S. gaining a similar capability DDG-51 Flight 2 by mid of this decade, more likely by 2030. Nanchang, the lead ship of the Type 055 class, was commissioned amid the pandemic and lockdown in China. 6 years ago, the likelihood of a major war was tiny. Since then, it has grown steadily and dramatically, and today is by far the most likely major event in the 2020s. The ultimate conflict can come from two ways. A conventional conflict involving at least two major powers that escalates into an open nuclear war. A second scenario is possible in the 2025 to 2030 timeframe. A Russian sneak first strike against the United States and its allies with the new S-500, strategic missile defenses, Yas and M submarines, INF Zircon and Caliber missiles, and some new space asset playing the key role. The sneak first strike would involve all Russian missile strategic forces branches, bombers, and ground-based missiles at the different stages of such attack. That would be strategic translation of what was seen in Syria in November 2015. There was no report that the Russian had such a capability of launching a high-precision, multiple, combined arms attack at targets 2,000+ kilometers away. Western intelligence had no clue. The irony is that since the end of the Cold War, the United States has been maneuvering through NATO to achieve a position to execute a first strike over Russia, and now it seems that the first strike may occur, but the country finished would be the United States. Another particularity of the Western system is that its individuals have been brainwashed to the point that the majority accept their moral high ground and technological edge as a given. This has given the rise of the supremacy of the emotional arguments over the rational ones which are ignored or deprecated. That mindset can play a key role in the upcoming catastrophic events. At least in the Soviet system, the silent majority of the people were aware of the fallacies they were fed up. We can see the United States claims about G5 being stolen from them by China or hypersonic technology being stolen by Russia as the evidence that the Western elites are also infected by that hubris. Over the next decade, it will become obvious that the West is falling behind the Russia-China bloc, and the Malays might grow into desperation. Going to war might seem a quick and easy solution to restore the lost hegemony, to finally find them into a France 1940 moment. Back then, France did not have nuclear weapons to turn a defeat into a victory. The West might try that swap because the unpleasant prospect of not being Mars and Venus, but rather a bully and his dirty bitch running away in fear while the rest of the world is laughing at them. If there is not a dramatic change, of course the world is going to witness the first nuclear war. The Western Bloc collapse may come before, during, or after the war. It does not matter. A nuclear war is a game with billions of casualties, and a collapse plays in the hundreds of millions.